Too Much Information is a production of iHeart.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Too Much Information, the show that brings you the secret histories and little-known fascinating facts and figures behind your favorite TV shows, music, movies, and more. We are your two genius Jehovah's Witness, genre-bending, guitar-slinging, Paisley-parked progenitors of Minneapolis minutia.
I'll allow it.
I'm Alex Heigl.
And I'm Jordan Runtagh. That was very good.
And this week we are continuing our two-part exploration of the phenomenon that is Prince's Purple Rain. We have moved from the world of the strictly oral into the visual. We're now looking at the hallucinatory vision of Prince's Minneapolis that's part biopic and part hagiography. Without a doubt, one of the strangest and most successful cinematic ventures ever mounted by a musician at their own behest.
That's a really crucial point, too. Nobody asked for this. This wasn't like a big studio that was like, hey, we gotta use Prince, or we have this great idea. Who could we get for this? Oh, Prince. No, Prince was just like, hey, I really want to do this thing. I don't really have an idea for it.
Yeah, and in the pantheons of, musician starring things, like that aren't explicitly, I guess we have to slot in a bunch of biopics, right? Like Ray and Dreamgirls and stuff, but none of those people are playing themselves, So,
I gotta say, this is another bad Prince take from me in a long line of bad Prince takes from me. I always kind of ignored that there was a movie that accompanied the album. I kind of just assumed for many, many years that it was just this embarrassing vanity project that happened to be
Which it kind of is.
Oh, yes. I mean, bearing in mind everything we just said, yeah.
The quiet part out loud is that it's not a good movie. It's like...
But it's better than it has any right to be. I think that was how I approached it. I mean, I literally thought that it was just like a long music video for a very long time. And then when I did watch it quite late, I want to say I was like out of college. Yeah. It was good, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's really carried off on Prince doing the Kubrick stare, all like just his powerful gaze. And like, I think the secret MVP of this movie is Morris Day, not Apollonia, not like anyone else. It's just like, it's Morris Day, because the rest of them are all like perfectly serviceable actors in a sense.
Apollonia, I don't know.
But in another truer sense,
when she's in
the lake.
They're
all bad. Yeah, no, they're all bad.
Yeah.
But like, Morris Day, man, that guy should have had a bigger career if he weren't so addicted to coke. Like, he just holds the camera and just like struts around. He's got it. He's got that thing that draws you to him, and he's just so
and that laugh is so good.
So annoying and hilarious that it's like, how's the family? He's so funny. Yeah, and we know obviously all the music stuff looks amazing.
I didn't realize until rewatching scenes from this how all the years that I was a wedding DJ, I was subconsciously trying to recreate the opening scene whenever I would open the dance floor with "Let's Go Crazy."
Yeah,
I feel like that was what I was trying to make happen.
Yeah, that editing in that sequence is really cool. You see how it quickly became an influence on music video editing, really. Like the rapid fire cuts and just sort of the, I think there's like a girl on girl kiss in there that's so fast you barely see it, but otherwise it's just a bunch of like cool detail shots of people wearing ridiculous fashions and so forth. But that opening scene crackles pretty well. It just slows to a damn halt whenever anyone's actually forced to act.
All right, here's a fun little thought experiment game.
Hit me.
Movies that are nowhere near as good as their soundtrack. I would like to offer up Saturday Night Fever, Bodyguard, Reality Bites, maybe, Garden State, maybe.
Famously, yeah.
Glitter, I'm actually not even sure if the album's all that good, but I know the movie is worse.
Soundtrack better than album. Godzilla.
For me. Yeah. Oh, you're totally
not
right.
Not the P Diddy. Yeah, but not the P Diddy song. But there's a banging Rage Against the Machine song on there. There's Jamiroquai. Mortal Kombat, the original, was pretty big for me.
Also good, yeah.
It has like Napalm Death up against Orbital, like it's just a very strange
Orbital was
mix
big for you, right? That was an MTV2 era, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just so funny hearing Orbital pop up in like Mean Girls and other stuff. Halcyon on and on, like pop up as like the end of Mean Girls when I'm like, that's the Mortal Kombat song. But what else is in this category? What else is in this category? This is a great thought experiment. Flashdance.
What's on the soundtrack other than
Maniac.
yeah? Other than that,
That's it.
I'm not counting like a bad movie that had a good song. I mean, like the full album was like, oh, that's a banging soundtrack.
Yeah, okay, maybe not Flashdance. Although, yeah, that's Flashdance has What a Feeling and Maniac. Really,
What
the
a
two big
Feeling's
ones.
in that too. Oh.
Do you want to know what the streaming ones are?
Yeah, what?
Furious 7. It's been a long road.
Oh, that makes total sense. Well, that was number one for like 15 weeks, wasn't it?
About it when I see you again. Yeah.
Didn't that break the record for the longest number one?
I don't know.
Oh.
I don't care. Star is Born, Greatest Showman, Frozen. The 2016 Suicide Squad soundtrack has 2.5 billion streams.
Oh. All right.
Huh.
Thought experiment over?
Oh man, I forgot my favorite shot in this movie that I wanted to talk about is when Prince meets Apollonia for the first time. He is not wearing sunglasses, and then he crosses around behind her and dons sunglasses, so that when he looks over her shoulder next, he seems to have emerged out of nowhere wearing sunglasses.
Wait, is that also the scene where he basically seduces her by staring at the back of her head and she just like feels his smirk?
Oh god, so many pinched smirks in this movie. It's an all-timer for smirking. I'm not sure. That's when he first meets her. He gets her card.
Yes.
With the other chick who's later in Apollonia 6.
Tweeted us.
So, tweeted us at Apollonia 6. Well, from the decidedly downer of an early draft that pulled from Prince's tortured upbringing to the breathtakingly disgusting meal combo he was seen eating at early development meetings, to the real-life feud between him and Morris Day, that kind of has a nice ending, to the mystical origins of his epic cloud guitar, and the lightning speed with which this whole thing came together. Here's everything you didn't know about Prince's Purple Rain, the movie. So as we mentioned last week, Prince had his mind on the silver screen from as early as the late 70s. I found a long thread on Prince.org that was collecting references to films Prince made in his lyrics across his entire career, including The Shining and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He also seemed to have an affinity for Roger Vadim. He referenced Vadim's films And God Created Woman and Barbarella in song. Barbarella has a few references, and he christened one keyboard player at one point Tommy Barbarella.
Of course he loved Barbarella. It's one of the horniest movies ever made with Jane Fonda.
Yes.
That poster is iconic. And you'll recall that me, you, and your then girlfriend, now wife, had a lovely afternoon watching it at my apartment on a Sunday afternoon.
Yes, I will.
A number of years ago. That soundtrack, speaking of movies where I guess it's as good as the movie, the soundtrack goes. It's by Bob Crew, who did a lot of like adult contemporary pop stuff in the 60s and worked with like the Four Seasons. So, I mean, of course Prince loved it. It's weird space sex and slick songs.
Good summation.
Check out Barbarella, everybody. It rules.
We should do that, actually.
Oh, yeah, that'd be fun.
Lisa Coleman remembers Prince having a poster for the Chris Christopherson Barbra Streisand version of A Star is Born on the wall in his pre-Paisley Park house, too. We mentioned that last week, after the success of 1999, Prince came to his management team and said if they wanted to re-sign him, they had to get him a movie deal from a legitimate studio with his name across the top.
I want it from a major studio. I don't want it from some drug dealer or diamond jeweler that you find.
Yeah,
incredible.
So specific and hilarious because, like, that would have been a source of funding in the 80s. Prince's managers, Bob Carvalho, Joe Ruffalo, and Steve Fargnoli, understandably blanched at this, but nevertheless started to put out feelers for financing. This was tricky because Prince was at this point the only draw to the project. There was no screenplay to shop it.
Just go to meetings and just toss an 8x10 glossy on the table. Just see the reaction it gets.
Just like draw a money sign over it. Prince had a rough story for the film that he'd cobbled together by himself for years. His treatment was subsequently reprinted in the posthumously published memoir The Beautiful Ones, and oh boy is it dark. the main protagonist, named, for some reason, Prince, witnessed the murder of his father at the hands of his mother, who then kills herself. In the last scene of Prince's version, rather than the triumphant musical performance that we know from the ultimate version of the film, Prince was to use that same gun in a scene of him seriously contemplating suicide.
Very Hamlet.
Ooh.
I know we'll touch on this later, but let's take a second to play armchair psychologist while we're here. Prince in real life, his parents split up. His dad very famously threw him out, and Prince would later say begging to come home was the last time he cried. And Prince would also make barely veiled insinuations of childhood abuse. So there's a lot here.
Yeah, I mean, the whole film it's basically just like a therapy session. You know, the whole thing about him not letting other people in and thinking everyone is out to get him. And that was something that Albert Magnoli did in his version of the screenplay, was very keen to highlight. But yeah, and then the part where his dad's like, you got a girlfriend? Prince is like, yeah. He's like, you want to marry her? And he like does a non-committal shrug, and he just goes, don't ever get married. Or like, don't get married, something. And it's just, yeah, there's a lot going on under the hood of this, not especially veiled.
I can't remember. Did Prince get married in real life?
Oh yeah, I cut a whole thing about him and his wife, Maria.
Oh, and yes,
And they like lost their first
the
kid.
baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I remember.
And he immediately went back to work. Mayte Garcia was her name.
Yes.
And like within days, he was performing a concert and shooting a music video and forcing her to co-star in it, where they laid in a hospital bed in the same hospital their son had just died in. I cut that because it was too dark.
How did he die again?
He was born with some kind of a syndrome that basically made it so he would never be able to breathe on his own, and they took him off a ventilator.
Oh, it was RDS or something like that?
I don't remember the specific name. Again, I took it out because it was so dark.
Sorry.
But certainly it goes into the rich stew of Prince's dad stuff. Astoundingly, the movie at this point was called Dreams. And it was under this title that Prince's management convinced William Blinn, executive producer of the TV show Fame, to help out with a proper screenplay.
I can't believe it. That makes so much sense that they got the Fame guy.
They got the Fame guy.
Yeah. Oh my God. Blinn told Spin for the 2009 oral history of Purple Rain, the movie, I went to Hollywood, where Prince was putting together final touches on a video. Met him at an Italian restaurant in Hollywood. What I remember more than anything was that he was the only person I'd ever seen in my life who had pasta and orange drink. Now, when he says,
does that imply? I was gonna say, does that imply Tang?
Oh, I was gonna say like Orange Crush or orange soda.
That's either. I mean, none of this makes it better. Whether it's Tang, an orange soda, or just raw orange juice, it's all pretty.
Orange juice is worse. Tang is in the middle. Orange soda, I would allow. Because that seemed like
orange soda and spaghetti.
I mean, that's like something you would have at like a kid's birthday party at a roller rink when you're like 8, and it's like, all right, we got this catered.
I guess it's not that far from orange soda and pizza, but
Yeah,
gross.
yeah, it's still weird. I thought it was orange juice, and that's unforgivable. Yeah. Blinn continued, I didn't get it then, the choice of food and drink pairing. I don't get it now, but what the hell? He had definite ideas of what he wanted to do. Generalized storyline, broad strokes. It wasn't his life, but it was about his life. Ooh, that's an interesting distinction.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it was wall-to-wall docudrama, but he knew where he'd come from, and he wanted the movie to reflect that. Insightful. That's a great quote. In May 1983, Blinn went to Minneapolis to hold long conversations with Prince, soak up the Minneapolis ambiance. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. I've never been. I'm sure it's wonderful. And work on the screenplay.
It's not.
Oh, have you been?
No, but just the way everyone talks about the weather and the making of this movie, I'm like, no, I'm not going there. I don't care that there were several Minneapolis punk bands and Prince that I liked. It's not enough reason to go subject myself to that.
Soak up the Minneapolis ambiance and work on the screenplay with his notes and music. It was Blinn's idea to add a rivalry between the two bands based on the fraternal rivalry between Prince and Morris Day, and he ultimately finished his draft in about a month. I took the orange juice anecdote myself to leave you ample time to take the Morris Day sidebar.
Morris Day, man. What do you, like I mentioned at the intro, man who just bends this film around him by sheer charisma. He was born the same year as Prince, and he was actually just he was a drummer first. Great drummer, everyone says. The two of them went to high school together, and Morris played drums in one of Prince's high school bands, Grand Central, which Day's mom managed, which is hilarious. This didn't mean, though, that they were immediately best of friends. Day recalled in a Forbes interview that it was weeks before Prince even spoke to him directly. He would just hang out in the doorway of the rehearsal room and watch him drum, and kind of probably gave him a nice pinched smirk and then turned around and walked out.
I mean, is this a thing where he just is trying to cultivate mystique, or do we think he's genuinely shy?
Yeah, no, I think everyone described him as actually quite shy and introverted. And that, he basically, by creating this character, this larger-than-life Prince character that he could inhabit, it let him duck outside of his innate shyness. But that's what one of the log lines that everyone says about him is yeah, he was the assless chaps, James Brown move, guitar virtuoso, dolphin shrieking guy, but he was painfully shy. Make of that what you will. Day's family moved the family to Maryland and then California, and when they returned to Minneapolis in 1980, as Day told UltimatePrince.com, Prince had already signed with Warner Brothers. By then, he already had his situation up and running, he said. He knew I was back in town. We started hanging out again. I started playing drums on a lot of tracks. We were jamming a lot, writing stuff together. He told me, you can use my studio to put your thing together. Well, the first thing that I started to cut was Party Up, which is a track that would later end up on Dirty Mind. It was a lot slower and funkier, but he liked it, and he wanted it. It was just a bass and drum track at that point, but he wanted it. So he said, I'll offer you money, or I'll help you get your record deal. I said, I'll take the record deal. Prince, as was his wont, immediately got to work, helping Day form The Time in 1981. The pair largely crafted the group's first 3 albums alone in the studio, before putting a live band together that featured future producing superstars Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Yeah. Jordan, what do they work on?
A lot of Janet Jackson stuff. I interviewed them. I should know more. But yeah, the Janet Jackson, I think Rhythm Nation stuff was the big one.
So Day has a memoir out called On Time, A Princely Life in Funk. Good stuff. That does very little to help Prince's reputation as a deeply competitive control freak, essentially. According to Day, Prince stifled the band's record distribution in Europe via Warner's and blocked them from performing in many of the major A markets that Prince would hit on tour, relegating them to smaller cities and smaller venues. Dick move, Prince.
Yeah.
It does seem that he felt like the second he helped anyone out, he was immediately allowed to
be addicted to them forevermore in perpetuity.
Yeah, control them and do things that he... And they were under his thumb, basically.
This dynamic is probably best exemplified by a situation Day recalls when The Time and The Revolution were still touring together, during which Prince apparently got some members of his band to pelt The Time with eggs during their performance. He told Forbes, we get off, and he's thinking this is real funny. And he said, don't try and do that to me. This warning did not work. Day continued saying, we retaliated. Prince gets on stage and we're slinging eggs at him and messing up his performance. Then he gets off stage and it turned into a big ordeal. It ended up with he and I in a room with a security guard. He's cussing and yelling at me. I ended up footing the cost of the damages of that whole fight because he was in control. We were signed to his production company. He was dangling the carrot I'll pull the deal at Warner's. You won't be this, you won't be that. That's just the way it went. And Day also talks about Prince bringing both himself and the rest of the time to Paisley Park for an hours-long lecture on the virtue of his newfound Jehovah's Witness faith. Day later went by himself at Prince's behest, only to have Prince again ask him to convert because he was unsuccessful the first time. And then when Day said no, he refused to work with him for a number of years.
Messed up.
Yeah.
Day rewrote or improvised a lot of his lines in Purple Rain, including my favorite, how's the family? When he passes Prince's dressing room. He said, we'd recorded Cool and had added it to the show. It was on the radio, roasting on the charts. Not a phrase I'm used to, but sure. And we were at rehearsal, and I get to the part, somebody bring me a mirror. And all of a sudden, Jerome appears. He snatched a mirror off the wall somewhere, and he appears in front of my face, holding up a mirror. And it was just one of them moments, one of them aha moments. Despite all this, and co-starring in Purple Rain, Day said that he was paid $50,000 for the film, all told, which he then had to split with the time. He later said he ended up making about $25,000 from Purple Rain, and at least as of his interview with Forbes, he said, "I see some royalties, but they're not great." And to be fair, Day was very coked up during the shoot. He showed up hours late at one point, and Prince blew up with him. Prince shoved him, and things nearly turned into a brawl before it was broken up by time drummer Jellybean Johnson. It's so hard naming these band members with a straight face. Jellybean Johnson, Matt, Dr. Fink. God, dude, it's so damn funny to see them all in these like frilly horseshit albums and then just...
Oh, the outfits?
And yeah, and Matt Fink in the scrubs. Like,
oh, yeah.
Come on.
like a lost member of the Village People.
Yeah.
Wait, so Morris Day got $50,000 for this that he then had to split with the rest of the band. How much did Prince make? Do you know?
I mean, I'm sure that's just unquantifiable because millions, certainly.
Oh,
I'm sure
yeah.
he got a cut of the back end.
Oh,
He
sure.
probably negotiated for that in.
Yeah.
Morris Day and Prince reconciled before Prince's death in 2016, though years later, there was one sad grace note to their relationship. In 2022, Prince's estate forbade Day from using the trademarked name Morris Day and the Time, insisting he needed to license it from them for use. And you'll see this becomes a trend with the Prince estate.
Yeah, unrelated, but still kind of related because I had to deal with the Prince estate a lot because Prince died the day that I first interviewed with people. And it just kind of like set the tone of my first like 6 months there. I feel like there was always like people coming out of the woodwork that we had to interview, and then the Prince's estate would get mad that we had. Yeah, but one of my first big exclusives at People was interviewing the folks at the crematorium who designed the Prince's custom-made Paisley Park-shaped urn. Have you seen this?
Of course, yeah.
It looks like a Polly Pocket model of Paisley Park. Like, it doesn't look good. Like, there's no gravitas there.
You know, he asked for something and he got it.
It's like a mini purple baby grand in there. I mean, it's like a dollhouse.
He asked for what he wanted and he got it.
All right.
As you meditate on that, we'll be right back with more Too Much Information after these messages.
Prince's management team were rejected by basically every director they approached, which makes sense because it was basically them pointing at an 8x10 glossy of Prince and going,
This guy?
Yeah. Oh, no, I guess they did have a script at this point. At one point, when the script was still known as Dreams, it was shopped to James Foley, who was then screening his upcoming film Reckless around LA. One of Prince's managers, Bob Carvalho, was at one of these screenings, scoping out Foley for the Dreams Purple Rain job, and after Foley also passed, Carvalho vented to Reckless's editor, Albert Margoli. He said something to the effect of, "I don't understand. I got a lawyer in Los Angeles who gave me a talent agent who gave me a series of clients. I don't know why we're getting stonewalled." Margoli, basically just feeling bad for the poor guy, offered to take a look at the script and said that the bleak family stuff had to go and that the band rivalry and Minneapolis local flavor needed to be at the center of the story. So Carvalho pressed him further, asking what he would do for a story. And basically, off the top of his head, Albert Margoli rattled off the eventual plot of Purple Rain. Carvalho, very impressed, asked Margoli if he would consider the job. As Margoli recalled to the Huffington Post, "I said, put me on a plane to Minneapolis tomorrow night. I'll meet with Prince and I'll tell him this new story. If he likes it, we'll make a film. If he doesn't, you're out nothing more than the cost of a plane ticket." And this was in June 1983, shortly before William Blinn had finished his first draft of the script and returned to LA to go back to making Fame.
I wanna live forever.
When Magnoli got to Minneapolis, he was confronted by another member of Prince's management, the similarly named Steve Fargnoli. That's why I said his name wrong.
It's very confusing.
Yeah. Magnoli said, "Steve immediately zeroed in on me and said, 'We're not doing your story. The film we're doing is the script that's being written, and that's all there is to it. I'm going to take you to the hotel where Prince is staying, and he's going to come down the elevator at exactly midnight, and you're going to meet him.'" When Prince came down to meet Magnoli, presumably exactly at midnight, he was struck by the star's seeming self-consciousness, something that he would come to identify as an important part of the movie's tone. When Prince asked him about the Dream screenplay, Magnoli brashly told him something to the effect of, "I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about a story I told Bob yesterday in Los Angeles," before launching into another mini pitch for what he'd told Carvalho, adding on-the-fly elements of characterization from what he'd just seen right then and there as Prince's own vulnerability and isolation. Prince dismissed everyone else and took Magnoli out for a late-night drive in his blue BMW, leaving the city and cruising through pitch-black Minnesota farmland. He asked Magnoli, "Do you know me?" When Magnoli answered truthfully that he'd only heard cuts from 1999 on the radio, Prince responded, "Well, how is it then that you came here and in 10 minutes you told me my life story?" Imagine Prince telling you that, presumably at dawn, driving through farmland in his blue BMW.
I would be a little frightened, actually.
Yeah, maybe.
Originally, they were set to use $500,000 from Prince and another $500,000 from his management, which would have been a terrifyingly shoestring budget for a feature film.
That's like $3 million today.
But then they started shopping it around to studios. Both Richard Pryor's and Jim Brown's Indigo Productions and the Geffen Film Company were interested, but they wanted too much creative control. And the project was rejected by essentially every other major studio as well, until Mo Austin, who is one of Prince's biggest boosters at Warner Brothers, decided to help out and agreed to throw in some financing for the film. I met with the head of production at Warner at that time, Mark Canton, and convinced him, Austin told Billboard in 2016. The top executive in the company had some misgivings about it, and in order to get them to commit, the management, and probably Prince himself, agreed to put in some money to front the film. And we told the film company that we, the record company, would guarantee everything that went over budget. So that really sealed the business part of the deal. Warner Brothers agreed to throw in $7 million to the Purple Rain budget. A large part of that was supposedly something like $2 to $4 million of Mo Austin's own salary.
That's crazy.
Like, he took an advance against his future salary to help fund Purple Rain. Get yourself a friend like Mo Austin.
Yeah, seriously.
One of the studio notes was, early on, if John Travolta could be considered for the role of the kid.
Oh, jeez.
That would be just the fucking piece of shit. Actually, you know what? He can probably have made it work.
I would
the
allow
dancing,
it.
certainly.
Oh, yeah. I would allow it if he wore the frilly new romantic outfits and the Chelsea boots.
Oh, he for sure would have. I mean, like...
He has to.
Yeah, well, I mean, he wears worse in...
everything else.
Staying Alive?
Oh, the sequel. The misbegotten Saturday Night Fever sequel.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that.
I see some of the costumes he wears. Well, it's sort of he's torqued, but he's sort of wearing the Prince Speedo from Dune. Why is he so oily? Yeah. Well, Magnoli brashly shut the John Travolta aspect of things down before also shutting down the studio's request for a PG-13 rating, intent on keeping the darker aspects of the film in place. It would have probably still been PG at this point, actually. I think that's a misremembered bit because the PG rating had been created like a year or two before this was in production. Warner's eventually folded, and Magnoli was soon on his way to Minneapolis to interview local musicians and other people in Prince's circle to gather material for the film.
Yeah, so about those darker elements we touched on earlier, Prince's character in the film, named simply the Kid, no longer Prince, is not a great guy. There's the famous scene in which he tells Apollonia to purify herself in the cleansing waters of Lake Minnetonka.
You haven't completed the purification.
And then after she does so, tells her that the body of water she was just in was not, in fact, Lake Minnetonka, before taking off on his motorcycle, leaving her freezing, naked, and stranded for a time. Not cool. A rare moment of... Actually, no, there's a lot of moments of him not being great to women, as we'll touch on.
Yeah.
There's also a scene in which Morris Day and Jerome Benton literally toss a woman into a dumpster, something that Magnoli said that, as well as the other misogyny, was intended as commentary on the actual sexism in the club scene and music industry at the time, and not an endorsement of it. Yeah.
Was it, though?
It's played for comedy.
It sure is. Which broad and dumb comedy.
Yeah. But something that you write is resolutely not funny, and I'll co-sign that, is the scene in which the Kid hits Apollonia in the film, which you may remember from last week was the scene that caused Stevie Nicks to flee the premiere and hide in the bathroom. I wonder if she had PTSD from being with Lindsey Buckingham all those years.
Yeah,
Jesus.
Yeah.
It was also a point of contention, this scene, with Prince's rival, Michael Jackson, who told a friend that he also left the Purple Rain movie in bad spirits, saying, quote, can you read this in the voice?
Oh, yeah. Prince looks mean, and I don't like the way he treats women.
Salient points, MJ.
Yeah, true.
Yes.
True. Yeah.
Prince later defended the slapping scene in his very first TV interview. That's not quite true. He was interviewed as an 11-year-old on a picket line for teachers strike.
Okay. All right.
Saying it was a story, a fictional story, and should be perceived that way. Violence is something that happens in everyday life, and we are only telling a story. Apollonia echoed that on the tour for the film, saying the movie had to do with alcoholism and a dysfunctional family. There was an abusive relationship, and it paralleled the relationship that Prince had with his parents. But...
Yeah, as I was writing this, man, the New York Times Magazine published an article that I think it was on, might have been just like 5 days ago. It's all about this lost Prince documentary that'll will definitely never see the light of day because of estate issues and this, that, and the other. But Netflix is tied up in it somehow. It's this guy, Ezra Edelman, and it is 9 hours long. And it has one scene in particular that challenges Prince's whole fictional story. Jill Jones, who you may remember from last week's episode, was one of Prince's backup singers who was with him when he supposedly made the decision to yank the bass out of the mix of When Doves Cry. And she recalls, on screen, she recalls one night in 1984 when she and a friend visited Prince at a hotel. Prince, naturally, overlooked Jones and started kissing her friend. Jones understandably slapped him before Prince looked at her and said, "Bitch, this ain't no movie." The pair then got into a fight, which ended with Prince repeatedly punching Jones in the face. She wanted to press charges against him, but eventually declined out of what still remained her love for him, and when his team told her that pursuing the issue would ruin his career. Now that scene is preceded by Tyka Nelson, Prince's sister, recalling how their father used to hit their mother when they were growing up. Obviously, as in Purple Rain, it's intended to depict the cycle of violence that physical abuse often locks multiple generations into, but it still casts a pall over the film and Prince's views on women as a whole. I was looking at this, and there were actually, historically, contemporaneously, there were many people pressing on him, so, or bringing this up when the movie came out. So, at least for the time, it was not overlooked.
Yeah, I mean, that's more that can be said for a lot of this kind of stuff in media.
So, on a lighter note, back to the movie. We mentioned that it was originally supposed to star Vanity as the female lead, but people have said that it wasn't necessarily the breakup of Prince and Vanity, but the fact that she supposedly was in the running for the role of Mary Magdalene in Martin Scorsese's The Last Temptation of Christ. Barbara Hershey ultimately played that role and was nominated for a Golden Globe, but supposedly that's the reason that Vanity left. Director Albert Magnoli told Spin, "I felt bad for her because I knew she was in a terrible bind." In the end, she and her representative made the determination that they would do the Scorsese project, which then got delayed because of financing. Oof. Gina Gershon auditioned for the role and got as far as meeting Prince, but she wasn't down with the explicit sexual nature of the role, let's say.
What movie?
Go on.
We talked about her in something.
She's come up multiple times. I think, I don't know if it was most recently, but it was for the lesbian thriller Bound that she made with Jennifer Tilly. That was the Wachowskis' first film.
Oh, right.
That's what got one guy at Warner's to be like, these guys have something. Sorry, these people have something. He would have said guys at that point. I'm just being historically accurate. Please don't cancel us.
Isn't that what Kanye based his song Bound 2 on?
I don't even know. We're just... That name's not going to be referenced in this podcast ever if I have my druthers. Do you feel like did you
I love when
Kanye
you get your Jiminy Glick voice.
Do you feel like you clocked Prince or do you feel like you clocked Kanye West from the beginning?
Yeah. I mean, I loved My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy for
sure.
But the ego that would have to make something that astonishingly manic and that astonishingly delusional in a way. Yeah. I mean, I think that would that was a sign after the Taylor Swift thing, also a sign.
Yeah. I just always thought he was not good.
Oh, you didn't like that album? Oh, that's like a rare
no,
hip hop
I mean,
album that I actually like love.
See, I actually never drilled into that. I kind of wrote him off after like College Dropout stuff because I was
Really?
yeah. I mean, like I kind of pretty quickly clocked that it was like, oh, the sped up soul sample is like your thing. Because right around that time he'd done H to the Izzo, which is like one of my favorite Jay-Z songs. But I was like, after like hearing 3 to 4 songs in a row where Kanye was just doing the sped up soul sample, I was like, okay, I get this guy's thing. And then, I was in my jazz era in college. So,
I mean, he did.
Anyway.
He did have a great run on Twitter. Didn't he say like, I hate when I like sleep on a plane and I wake up and somebody put like a water bottle on my tray.
Now
it's
like, great.
Now I got to be responsible for this bottle of water.
He did also call, what's the elder Kris Kardashian, Kris Jong-il at one point.
Oh yeah, that was also good. Also medium funny. Kris Jenner, jeez.
Kris Jenner. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, right. Anyway, production saw. I've also heard that Jennifer Beals turned it down to go to Yale, which was probably a smart decision. Production saw hundreds of girls for the role, ultimately landing on actress/model/singer/dancer Apollonia Cotero.
When she showed up for casting, she later told The Current, there was a girl walking out of the casting office. It was Nina Peebles, and I remember she had this terrified look on her face, and she said, "It's you! You're the one!"
You're gonna kill me!
Abbott Magnoli liked Apollonia because she showed up in sweats, apparently. Apollonia later told Spin, I was in South America and Mexico, singing in nightclubs, doing commercials, TV series, films. I had to submit my tape with songs and the acting reel, meet the producers in LA, and meet Prince in Minnesota. He was shy, and he smelled real good. Like purple. We sat there and stared at each other for the longest time. Prince took her to dinner. She remembers he had spaghetti and tea, so clearly he must have been in a spaghetti phase. Tea is...
What kind of tea? Green? Herbal?
If it's like
peppermint?
English breakfast tea, that's gross. Yeah.
Awful.
Any kind of black tea. No. And after this Italian meal, he took her to the First Avenue Club to dance. I felt like I'd met him before, she continued to The Current. There was something that still to this day I don't understand. I don't really believe in past lives or anything, but I felt really comfortable with him. Supposedly, when it came time to film the couple's sex scene, they shot it 3 ways with a G, PG, and R rating in mind. A G-rated sex scene with Prince? Jesus Christ. There's also a long-standing rumor that there's a much more explicit version of this sex scene out there, since the MPAA allegedly gave Purple Rain an X rating when it was first submitted. I want to do a quick sidebar, although I think you know more about it than me, on Prince's recording session for the Batman soundtrack with Kim Basinger.
Oh.
All I remember, because he was like trying to date her, and all I remember is that he was trying to make a singer out of her, and he sent everyone away from the studio to work with just her. And then they came in the next day, the technicians did, and they found the mixing board all covered with honey. Am I remembering that right?
I actually don't know. I'm so sorry. I wish I could verify that.
That seems like a pure Alex Heigl story. I can't believe.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I feel like one of my coworkers, one of my first coworkers in New York, told me some kind of story where someone like came to a Hollywood party once and they thought they saw Kim Basinger running around a pool being pursued by a naked 12-year-old, and it was Prince.
An engineer said to a magazine that Prince arrived in the studio with Kim and a pot of honey. Everyone was ordered out. Later on, when everybody came in the next day, there was honey all over the mixing desk.
That's real bad for the console, man. That's real bad for it. I think that's like rule number 1. Like, don't get honey in there.
Don't have honey sex on the...
I just don't understand honey sex, man. It's already such a series of delicate fluid balances, and then you're gonna introduce bees to it. You know?
That's a moment of vulnerability. I feel like Magnoli coming to see Prince and seeing that glimmer of vulnerability that others may miss.
I don't know, man. That came out of a bee. Why would you put it on?
That's the line for you.
Why would you put it on your parts? I
don't.
mean, I guess I get it. It tastes good, certainly, but I feel like if I was the one having it applied to, the second it starts getting anywhere near the bathing suit area or any significant holes, I'm just like, keep the bee stuff away from there. You know? Babies aren't even allowed to eat honey because of their yeah, because they haven't developed the relationship with the allergens yet. It can literally kill them.
Oh yeah,
And here we are, and here Prince is slathering around on Kim Basinger's. You've heard of it.
Well,
that part.
This time of year, though, it's important as the seasons change and allergies kind of kick in. If you're feeling a little under the weather because of that, it's really good to have very local honey. And there's actually, for any New Yorker listeners out there, there's actually a dealer in the Union Square Farmers Market that has honey that actually comes from beekeepers located on roofs in different neighborhoods. So you can have honey that's so local that it can be in your own neighborhood in New York. Is that nice?
How much are they paying you?
That was a nice memory. That was a nice thing. And actually, I find it very helpful.
Okay. All right. In the pocket of big honey.
The only big honey, Heigl, is you.
Aw.
Oh, where are we? Oh, this is great. So Prince hired an acting coach named Don Amendolia and a dance choreographer named, I can't believe this is his dance choreographer's name, John Command. I cannot believe that is the man's name.
He was the creative director of the Minneapolis Dance Theater, where they raised the Purple Rain taping show raised money for.
Tremendous name. Dance instructions were held at the Minnesota Dance Theater, and Lisa Coleman, Prince's keyboard player Lisa Coleman, remembered being in a proper jazz ballet class and being forced to do jazz hands, while Bobby, Dr. Fink, remembers every morning starting out with one of Jane Fonda's workout tapes, our second Jane Fonda reference this episode. Eventually, Prince released the cast from dance lessons after much protest on their end. Wendy Melvoin, another member of Prince's band, told the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, "You'd go into the next room in the warehouse, and there was Don Amendolia doing acting classes. Act like ice cream and melt. Then we'd go downtown to these dance classes, and there would be time drummer Jellybean Johnson, the 6'4" guy, trying to do pirouettes across the room with a trench coat on." Searing image.
I know. Really haunting.
A man named Jellybean.
So speaking of trench coats, let's talk wardrobe.
Oh, okay.
The film's stylists were Lewis Wells, who spent decades working with Earth, Wind, and Fire, and Marie France. And they took cues from everything from the then fashionable new romantic stylings of bands like Adam and the Ants, with the kind of military jacket and eye patch situation, Human League. And they also played up a lot of 17th and 18th century, what they call Byronic influences, like the cravat. Some influences were more specific. Prince's cropped leather motorcycle jacket was inspired by James Brown. Lewis Wells told Billboard he wanted this because it showed off his butt so well. He loved his butt. That's good. Every man should. Prince's look in the film varies from his trench coat, which was a holdover from the Dirty Mind era where he dressed the entire band in trench coats. And Wells said it was fun because you never knew what was going to be under it when it opened. But the frilly pirate shirts, amid other centuries-old touches, came right from Prince's name. Wells said, "When I first met Prince in 1981, he had this idea to make an autobiographical movie about his life. He told me he would call it Purple Rain because purple was the color of royalty, and he thought of himself as musical majesty." By the way, no one is ever going to know why this film was called Purple Rain or when it was named Purple Rain, because 17 different people have given 17 different accounts of it. I assume the most likely explanation is that the song came first and everything else followed. But then you got this guy who's like, no, in 1981, he told me it was going to be named Purple Rain, which I have to call bullshit on because at that time it would have been called Dreams. Lewis Wells died, so I can't say anything bad about it.
So did Jim Morrison.
Yeah, well, fuck him. Much of Prince and the Revolution's wardrobe was otherwise the wheelhouse of Prince's former bassist Andre Simon's seamstress sister Sylvia.
I just want to applaud that. You got that out.
She added a lot of the studs and the other accoutrements to whatever the band wore off the rack, as well as tailoring their outfits for them. Von Terry, who also worked in the wardrobe department of Prince, said, I would say we influenced the world of fashion with Prince. This is in an interview with Women's Wear Daily in tribute to Lewis Wells. He continued, "You would characterize Prince's influence with the ruffle shirt, the purple trench coat, the fitted pants with shearing up the side, the diagonal fly with the big 20mm buttons, certainly the leather jacket with the scarf with the tassels. Even now, we're still using it. I do storyboard references at Coach, pulling out Prince pictures. It's still influencing fashion tremendously. Also, did you know that there was an officially licensed line of Prince clothing called Purple Wear that was exclusively sold through the now defunct merry-go-round chain of retailers?"
I've never even heard of the chain of retailers. No. I could kind of see it being awesome.
I mean, it's out there. I think it's just like kind of mass market versions of a lot of the wardrobe. Purple Rain began shooting on Halloween of 1983. I forget if I mentioned this last episode or not, but Magnoli was so captivated by the Revolution's August performance of Purple Rain at First Avenue that he told Prince it had to be in the movie, which subsequently gave the film its name. But Magnoli also told the Huffington Post that the weather in Minneapolis had something to do with it. "The weather can be quite extreme, and they have very dramatic torrential downpours," he said. "Just before a fierce storm, clouds would begin to churn and roil. Prince would grab me and take me outside. We would stand together in a field just looking up at the sky. It would change color from dark gray to blue, and finally to purple. And then the sky would open up, and down came the rain." That sounds so romantic of them. Also, did you know that Prince has his own Pantone color?
I did not know.
18-3838.
Nice. Love that for him.
Yeah.
Speaking of, production paid $100,000 to close down First Avenue, the club, from November 26th through December 20th, 1983, to shoot the film's musical performances. Bob Carvalho told Spin, "We were a few weeks behind. We had 4 weeks set to shoot the music. So I said to Prince, you know, Albert's going to want to do 20 takes. He's going to want to get different angles. And Prince, he almost changed color. I'll give him 1 take for each song," he said. "No, that's extreme. What if we just did a couple takes with a bunch of cameras?" And that sounds like the compromise that they all agreed to. "We got a bunch of cameramen, and Prince, who's unbelievable, always hit his mark. If he did 3 takes, there was no change." Between Prince's abilities and the Revolution's unerring tightness after months of full-day rehearsals, what they'd budgeted 4 weeks to shoot took only 1. Director Albert Magnoli told Variety, "I'm a massive Bob Fosse fan, and he called after he saw the movie and said, 'I just can't believe that you shot all that music in 1 week. Do you know how long it took me to shoot the opening musical sequence in Lenny? A month.'" I just want to say I'm a huge Bob Fosse fan, and I was on a big Fosse kick earlier this year after I saw Cabaret on Broadway with Eddie Redmayne, and I watched the FX documentary and the book All That Jazz, which is like 600 pages long. I believe he means All That Jazz, the movie from 1979 with Roy Scheider, which is one of my favorite movies ever. That has a big opening musical number sequence that I think he spent a month working on. Lenny is a biopic of the famed comedian and free speech activist, you could say, Lenny Bruce. There are no musical numbers in that movie. Thank you.
I wonder if they got the refund back from First Avenue for only taking a week out of a projected 4.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good point. Didn't that place used to be like a bus station or something?
All of these like Prince locations used to be something industrial and sad. I think his warehouse was a dog food factory.
Yeah. Well, fortunately for the Purple Rain production, Director Albert Magnoli told Salon, "Warner Brothers left us alone. I must give them a lot of credit for that. They left us alone to make the film throughout the shoot and the entire process." However, he said this might have had to do with practical concerns and the goodness of their hearts, adding, "The winter in Minneapolis was harsh, 20 degrees below zero with 8 feet of snow. They were not inclined to visit us." Prince band member Wendy Melvoin added to the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, "Lisa and I had a condo in Edina, a town nearby. I remember that our call on the set was at like 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and the 2 of us had to get up an hour earlier to go out and turn the damn car on to get it warm enough to get into town. We'd be done filming by 10 o'clock at night." Ugh. Growing up in the suburbs of Boston, it's giving me bad flashbacks. Albert Magnoli told Rolling Stone that the weather's impact on the shoot was made immediately clear to them on Halloween 1983. "We were scheduled to begin shooting on November 1st, but it was a beautiful fall day. Bob said, 'Is there anything we can shoot that quickly to take advantage of this?' Meaning the beautiful weather. I said we could do all the aerial motorcycle shots. Within 48 hours, the temperature went from the mid-60s to 20 degrees and then below zero. The first snowstorm was 5 days later, and by the time we finished shooting, there were 8-foot snow drifts. The generator truck froze into ice. Just getting to the sets meant we had 3 trucks paving the way for us. He also added in a different interview that they had, quote, a blowtorch brigade of crew members who would come out and clear paths on exterior sets for specific shots.
Not a place where people
Miserable.
are supposed to live or film movies. Good Lord.
These conditions would prove harshest on Apollonia Cotero, who was arriving from LA. I wasn't accustomed to that type of weather, she told The Current. We had mini heaters on our hands and feet. One late afternoon, I went for a walk. It was my day off, and I wanted to go walk in the snow away from the hotel. I got caught in a mini blizzard. It started to snow, and it was nighttime already, and I didn't know where I was. Because I couldn't see where I was anymore, I thought I could be on the street, get hit by a car or something, you know? So I finally saw the green letters of the Holiday Inn, and I made it back, and I was terrified by the time I got back. I remember my hair was wet from the snow, and I guess I was crying. So I had icicles on my eyelashes. The people in the lobby were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I got lost." It was scary. I mean, that's a stupid thing someone from LA would do. I don't think I've ever been caught in a blizzard.
I mean, I don't know, dude. Like, I would never want to be in one of those whiteouts where you just like cannot see, especially in downtown Minneapolis. Holy, why do people live there? Things got worse for her while filming the famous Purify Yourself in the Cleansing Waters of Lake Minnetonka scene. And obviously, as Prince says in the film, first he tries to stop her from jumping in, and then afterwards he says, that isn't Lake Minnetonka. Rather, it's a portion of the Minnesota River near Henderson, Minnesota, which is like a population of 800 people or something. So they must have just driven down like one of the interstates and were like, yeah, this is fine. Apollonia told The Current that the first attempt of the scene is the one that ultimately ended up in the film, but that she did 3 more afterwards. And after the 4th, production shoved her into a tent where a nurse took her temperature, ascertained that she was going into shock from hypothermia, and rushed her to the hospital.
Oh, God.
And I just thought to myself, oh no, God. Oh no, God. I don't want to die. How many different line readings can I do that? And I just thought to myself, oh no, God, I don't want to die now.
I don't want to die now.
And I just thought to myself, oh no, God, I don't want to die now. Let's go with that one.
And I thought to myself, oh
no, God,
I don't want to die now.
I don't want to die now. This is like the
So I
Kanye
says to
thing where
God,
he's like,
I says to God,
I says to God, I don't want to die now. She said, I want to finish this movie. And I could hear, just in the distance, the nurse's voice. She was panicking. And I just started to fade out. And then Prince came in because I remember feeling his warmth. He held me and he said, please don't die. Please don't die, Apollonia. And his voice kind of cracked. And I don't know, it took a while, but I remember just like in the movies, you kind of fast forward. And then I started to see images and it was him. And I just remember once I was able to talk, I just said, no, I'm not going anywhere. I have to shoot more. We've got to get more in the can, man. I'm not going anywhere. We've got to shoot some more. And he kind of chuckled. He probably favored her with a very emotional pinched smirk. Anyway, after all this they wound up finishing a lot of that stuff in LA. Despite all of the weather that was trying to kill them every chance it could get, Margoli told Rolling Stone that the most difficult day was when Prince trashes a basement. There was some apprehension when we had to tear apart the basement. It was emotionally rough. It takes a lot to tear apart a basement. We didn't have the budget for a second take. He added that Prince had a really hard time with this with a different shot. It's the scene in the film where the kid deals with his father's attempted suicide and his own briefly imagined one, which is quickly flashed as him hanging from the basement ceiling. Magnoli said, it's a shot that lasts less than 8 frames, but that was a highly emotional scene. Prince was very agitated during the entire thing, especially when I had to hang him up. His body had to be roped into this harness to be hung on a stud in the basement. We put him on the hook and he was hanging there. Then I said to one of the grips, touch his body so he's swinging. And he just went berserk. He just lost total control. The fear was coming from a real place. That's mean that they put a little short guy up and started pushing him around and making him swing. Come on, guys. He He was probably just scared. He'd never been that far off the ground before.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more Too Much Information in just a moment.
Hello, folks. It's me, the mean one, Alex, from Too Much Information.
I'm here too.
Jordan's here too. For a variety of reasons that are not interesting, Jordan and I have, in our quest to make this thing as efficient as possible and justify the enormous amount of time we spend on it weekly, have been trying a variety of things, and we are now at the begging stage. We're not going to do a paywall. We're not going to do a Patreon. But what we are going to do is drop the, I am told it is pronounced Ko-fi, which is sort of a digital tip jar into this episode's description. I know people complain about the ads, but trust us, we're not seeing ad revenue. And this is a way to make it a little more sustainable and let us keep doing it, essentially. If the average monthly listenership of this podcast just gave us 50 cents, it would be a truly affecting amount of money. And if everyone gave $1, it would be like life-changing for a few months. So that's all there is. We're not doing a payroll. We're not doing a Patreon. We're going to drop a Ko-fi link in there. And if you feel so compelled, you may donate to it. And we will be ever so grateful and not let it go to our heads or affect our work in any way. Probably. That is all. On to our regularly scheduled programming. So, Alex's gear corner. It's Alex's gear corner. No one cares about the I put it in.
Oh, I'm very excited about this.
So I promised last week that we were going to talk about the guitar in the movie. And here we go, baby. Prince's so-called cloud guitar, and I think it got its nickname because on Around the World in a Day, Prince is wearing the cloud suit, and this is the guitar that he's holding, so it just got started calling the cloud guitar. It was made by a local Minneapolis luthier named Dave Rusin, who was then working at the astonishingly named Nietszchean Music, which is a uptown Minneapolis store co-founded by a local guitarist named Jeff Heigl, and Prince had been going there since high school. The luthier, Dave Rusin, told Premier Guitar that he'd actually been working in London for like 9 months at a different guitar shop, and one day after returning to Minneapolis, he saw Prince come into the shop and asked for the owner, Jeff Heigl. He and Jeff went into the back office, and they talked a long time, and then Jeff came down and told me, Prince is going to make a movie. He needs a guitar, and you're going to make it. Rusin and Prince actually went back further than this. The luthier auditioned for Prince's backing band in the early days. But in his own words, Prince was looking for a black female guitarist, so I didn't get it. There's a writer named Andrea Swenson who really went above and beyond trying to track down the exact inspiration for the cloud guitar. Supposedly, it's generally agreed upon that the guitar's distinctive design was inspired by a bass that Prince had bought Andre Simone, his childhood friend and the original bassist in his live band. But Simone remembered that this happened in San Rafael, California, when Prince was working at the record plant in Sausalito. The bass was made by Jeff Levin, who built instruments under the name Sardonyx Guitars, which is hilarious, but he worked out of the East Village. So after a ton of research, and I do mean a ton, Swenson was contacting Prince's roadies, calling all of those original shops. She got a call from one of the shops in San Rafael that she'd already checked out, who told her that the original owner had been contacted and had indeed confirmed that that was where Prince bought the bass in late 1977. Wildly unnecessary deep dive, but good for her. The actual bass looks kind of cool. He said it was inspired by Gibson mandolins, so kind of the curving parts of it are reminiscent of the mandolin design.
Which is what Gibson originally made, actually. My grandfather, I think it was my grandfather, had one that my dad now has that's like from the, I want to say it's the 19-teens, maybe 1920s. It's pretty cool looking.
Cool. Rusin remembered Prince had this bass with him in the store that day. I'd actually worked on it before. And his main requirements were just that the guitar should be in that shape, and it had to be white, and it had to have gold hardware. I think he specified he wanted EMG pickups, but compared to all the conversation you would usually have with someone about a custom guitar, there wasn't anything else he wanted to talk about. The size of the neck, the frets, the playability features, or anything. And this is funny. There was a guitar company in the 1980s called Heigl that had put out a model called the Shark, and they sent a bunch of these to this music store, Nietszchean, and that's what he carved the Prince guitar out of, the body of this defunct Shark guitar model. So you can say that Prince's cloud guitar is, in a way, a shark.
I'm not over Nietszchean.
Yeah. Well, it was a pain in the ass doing this, apparently. He said they had to strip down their first paint job and do it over again because of trying to get it into all those little scrolls and the little scrolls and detailing. And then he told Fretboard Journal in a different interview that his only memory of this all-important influence bass, the Sardonyx, was that it was basically a weird piece of shit. It had no truss rod and it had bar frets. That's all I remember. With only this to go on, and a few other scant details that owner Jeff Heigl was able to wring out of Prince on subsequent shop visits, Rusan turned in an instrument that Prince loved so much he ordered 2 more of. There was a 4th made for Warner Brothers, a promotional giveaway that they had in 1985, like win a Prince guitar, but no one seems to know where that one is. Later in the 1990s, Washington-based luthier Andy Beach made 27 additional copies of the cloud guitar for Prince. Rusan had since been making custom copies of the Prince guitar by hand in Minneapolis for years when, after Prince's death, his estate partnered with guitar maker Schecter to release their own line of Prince guitars that are sold in the Paisley Park gift shop, and demanded that Dave Rusan stop using the design and name. One of Prince's cloud guitar hangs in the Smithsonian after he donated in 1993.
Here, you want this.
Well, it's funny because so it hung up in the museum and it was credited to the wrong luthier. And that's part of what this woman went on her. She was just like, I want him to get credited. So that was what spurred her whole insane research thing. And, the luthier, when she finally got to him, the New York guy was just like, yeah, I mean, I wish it hadn't gone up without my name on it, but I guess it's fine. I believe they have since corrected the error. One of the ones that Rusan did make sold at auction in 2020 for $563 and $500. So I guess congrats to whichever rich piece of owns that now.
It's got to be Jimmy Irsay, guy who owns the Colts, and he owns like Hendrix's white Woodstock guitar, and I think he owns Tiger or one of Jerry Garcia's big
Jerry
ones.
Garcia's, yeah.
Did I ever tell you? So a friend of my girlfriend's family, real character, and just has a lot of great stories. And he knew I liked the Beatles, and he used to ever tell you this. And one day he would come up to me. It's happened a few times. He said, "Oh, I got John Lennon's piano, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, you don't, but." And then he would like punch me on the shoulder and be like, "Yeah, and I also got Hitler's Mercedes in the garage." And then he'd laugh and walk away. And I just thought he was messing with me. And then I was going to interview Yoko Ono for work, and word got back to him, and I got a text from him. Said, "Hey, show these pictures to Yoko and see if she wants to buy it." And it was this very, very distinct Baroque piano. It was like black and red with like these candelabras that were built in, these brass candelabras that were built into it. It looked like this like mystical piano. And I've seen it in pictures at John Lennon's house. It's the piano that he wrote all of Sgt. Pepper on, and All You Need Is Love, and like very famous piano. And he ended up selling it against my tearful wishes, and Jimmy Irsay bought it. I got to hit a key on it though. I got to play it. Yeah. Well, with all the guitar minutia settled, we have to move on to another character in Purple Rain, Prince's motorcycle, which also, of course, appears on the album cover. It's a heavily customized 1981 Honda CM400 Honda-matic, and with Prince at 5'2" and you assume 99 pounds, the motorcycle was comparatively lightweight at 400 pounds with a low seat height of 30 inches. It's dubbed a Honda-matic because it only had 2 gears, high and low, like me, and 27 horsepower. And it was the first of these to appear on screen. There had never been a Honda-matic on screen before. Let somebody prove me wrong. Prince was the first. One of the many barriers he broke.
I think it was because they were considered like children's
toys.
bikes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Man, when I was a little kid, I always wanted one of those like electric cars that you would sit in. And then I went to a kid's birthday party and they accidentally ran me over in one. And I don't want one anymore.
That tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were 3 of these movie bikes made. There was Prince's and 2 for stunt riding. That's kind of, I sort of am sad that he didn't do his own stunts.
I've heard that he did a good amount. Some of the riding, certainly. I mean, this is that opening scene where he just pulls up to
Yeah.
First Avenue on the motorcycle with a guitar just simply on plein air strapped across his back, which I'm like, come on, man. But yeah, he supposedly did a good bit of driving. There's a really funny, when I was researching last episode, Steve Lukather?
No, he's the guy from Toto.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So in some of the research I was doing last episode, there was Steve Lukather was being guitarist, Toto guitarist, and session whiz. Steve Lukather was being interviewed at Sunset Sound, and he said one of his memories of Prince where Steve Lukather was rolling in at like 10 a.m. for a job in right around the Purple era, and he turns like the corner from the parking lot, and there's Prince astride the motorcycle in like full purple regalia, like at 10 in the morning, being photographed. I should also mention.
I wish it was just him.
Just for just waiting out there. It's really funny because this is definitely going to get lost in the translation of podcast to visual, but he talks about like I think the first time Prince like was in the studio and Steve Lukather was playing, or there was some kind of situation where they were in the studio together, but he talked about how shy Prince was, and he was like, yeah, and we were just playing, tracking, like messing around, and then every so often we'd just see like Prince's tiny head come up from like below the mixing, from below the console desk, like the Kilroy was here view.
Oh, yeah. Oh wow. I met Steve Lukather. He was it was backstage. He's in Ringo Starr's All-Star Band, and before going on stage that night, he apparently always, or at least then, was in the habit of warming up by playing an acoustic 12-string, because then it's like baseball players when they like carry a bunch of bats and then they go up with just the one. It feels a lot easier having like the big chunky thick neck double strings for the 12-string. Made it a lot easier to do like single string bends and stuff on electric guitar later that night. That was a good tip. I liked that.
Man, his
sessionography's crazy.
His sessionography is crazy, but I'm thinking specifically of Rosanna. It's him singing on that and playing guitar. I wonder if does he play that batch guitar solo that rules so much?
I think he does. Here's a bunch of motorcycle details that neither one of us understand, but maybe you do.
Nope.
The Purple Rain bike had Comstar wheels, 6-bend handlebars, and a King Queen seat, but not a Prince seat. Stitched with recessed purple diamonds and supported by a Trident-style sissy bar. I know what a sissy bar is.
Yeah, so the King Queen is just like a 2-seater with like the Queen ostensibly being behind you, supported by the sissy bar.
The bike was also embellished with an early version of Prince's love symbol, which he'd later changed his name to. Prince kept the motorcycle and used it again in the film Graffiti Bridge, his 1990 sequel to Purple Rain, in which he again played the Kid. But it was repainted black, which I'm horrified by, and some of its chrome pieces were gold-plated. Okay, that's kind of cool. Yeah. These movies are actually some of the most lasting tributes to this bike. It wasn't around for very long. Honda produced the 400cc version from 1978 to 1981, and while most other engine sizes were offered in different years, overall sales were poor for the Honda Matic, and they were discontinued after 1983.
Flew too close to the sun, baby.
Prince's bike was retired to Paisley Park after filming for Graffiti Bridge Wrapped. But you saw one source that suggested that Prince's Honda Matic went up for auction in 2018.
I did. Never found a sale price for it, so.
Do you know who bought it? It sounds like a hard rock or a rock and roll Hall of Fame type of thing. That's like a pretty... I thought I saw it now that I'm thinking about it. Maybe it's one of the stunt ones at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I just like to imagine him driving it around the interiors of Paisley Park. Except for in the elevator. Ooh. You'll get that one on your way home.
Oh, how could you? How could you? Wow. Wow. One of the happiest moments of my life, it wasn't, but all for the purposes of this anecdote. My friend, who was a lot cooler than me, had I don't know why he had it, but he had what was basically like a cheap electric Vespa scooter. It wasn't Vespa, but it was like an electric scooter that you just plugged into the wall. It wasn't like anything crazy. And I somehow wound up with it. And a bunch of us were hanging out after school and nobody was around. And so we went around and opened all the doors and turned the school, because it was built in like a big O shape, and just rode the thing around down the school hallways and down like the ramps and stuff after hours.
Sick.
And it was really fun. It was real fun. It was probably the most like stereotypically bad thing I ever got up to.
All told, from Magnoli's fateful Prince meeting in July to the end of shooting in mid-December, Purple Rain was conceived, written, financed, organized, and shot in about 5 months, which is crazy. It shows?
Well, it doesn't show visually, but it shows in every other way. Or, well, not musically either. Just
It's really just the acting.
it looks real good.
know?
Yeah, like I almost wonder if this could have been saved if it had like
Real actors?
Jennifer Beal. Yeah,
Yeah. Boy, you have it in for Apollonia, huh?
she's cool.
She's pretty. She's a pretty brunette.
It's kind of my thing. Isn't that the name of Michael Corleone's Sicilian Bride that gets blown up?
I don't have that one deep on.
Yeah, Apollonia Vitelli Corleone.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
What's her real name? Patricia
Who?
Apollonia.
Oh, that's not her. Wow, I feel like one of those kids that just found out Santa's not real. I was like, oh, of course.
Patricia.
That's not her real name.
From San Pedro, California.
Who named her that?
Their parents?
No, Apollonia. Did Prince?
I assume Prince.
Oh, well, okay, it's her middle name. All right.
Anyway, Warner Brothers was very confused when presented with Purple Rain, somewhat understandably, but they were supposedly afraid of competing with the Rick Springfield starring Hard to Hold, a movie that I am just now hearing about.
Yeah, they gave him were they just like handing out? I guess he's kind of handsome.
I mean, it makes sense. He wound up on the soap, right? So
He did?
oh yeah, he was on General Hospital for 2 years in the 80s and then 4 years in the aughts. Anyway, Albert Magnoli assured them wouldn't be a problem competing with it. He was correct. There were 3 test screenings held for the film. Warners were concerned about the dumpster tossing scene and had Magnoli take it out for the second, after which he decided it was going back in. The first screening was done in Culver City, and the reaction to it was so insane that Warners thought they were being taken for a ride. They were like, there's no way this can be a real thing. Like, you juiced these stats. You seeded the audience or something. So Magnoli told Spin, the studio said, we need to go to Texas now and screen this in front of an all-white redneck audience. A week later, we fly down to Texas and put it on in front of 300 white kids. Within 3 minutes, they were all up on their feet. So he told Rolling Stone, by the third screening, they said, okay, we have something here. They originally thought to put it in 200 theaters, but that jumped to 900, and within a week, that number jumped to 1,000. This was helped by the fact that by the time Purple Rain was released on July 27th, 1984, When Doves Cry and Let's Go Crazy had both been enormous singles. Consequently, the film knocked Ghostbusters out of the top spot at the weekend box office. And while Beverly Hills Cop and Ghostbusters headlined that year's most successful list in terms of box office, Purple Rain narrowly missed out on making the top 10. It came in at the 11th spot. It grossed a very respectable $68.4 million on, again, a $7 million budget. And then Prince became the youngest ever winner of the Academy Award for Best Original Song Score. That is a weird Oscar category that has not been given out since him, because then I think they started treating it Best Original Score and Best Original Song. But do you know who Prince beat out for that record?
Oh, who?
George Harrison for Let It Be. He was 27 when he won that.
Whoa.
Prince beat him by a year.
Wait, song score, was that just a consolidated? No, what is? I don't understand what that category is.
I don't know either. Yeah, because everyone just does original score. I think it was like a weird category that was intended to differentiate between scores that would have been popular music versus traditional scores. That's the only reason I can think of the other winner, one of the other winners being George Harrison. Anyway, after they picked up the Oscar, Lisa Coleman told Spin that Prince immediately quipped to the band, "We better run. They're going to think we stole it." That said, reviews were mixed. There's a long-standing anecdote that Prince had a very specific nightmare before the film premiered about Siskel and Ebert ripping it to shreds. But both of them actually loved Purple Rain. They put it on their top 10 list for 1984. Roger Ebert later called it one of the greatest rock movies of all time. Which, sure. Vincent Canby at the New York Times had some of my favorite reactions. His most famous one is, from his review, is probably the flashiest album cover ever to be released as a movie. And then later, he drops this astonishingly catty line. With his mass of carefully tended black curly locks and his large dark doe eyes, Prince looks, in repose, like a poster of Liza Minnelli on which someone has lightly smudged a mustache. When astride his large motorcycle, as he is from time to time, the image suggests one of Jim Henson's special effects from a Muppet movie. Kermit the Frog on a Harley-Davidson. So mean.
Unfortunately, as we mentioned in the last episode, Prince didn't have particularly long to enjoy the film, with the Purple Rain tour starting in November 1984. This screwed up much of Albert Magnoli's attempts to get a sequel off the ground. As he told Rolling Stone, "If you look at the credits for Purple Rain, it said, 'May you live to see the dawn.' That's what I wanted to do next with him, the dawn. We discussed doing a true musical, singing and dancing, a Broadway show on film. But Prince had to go do the Purple Rain tour, and that took him away for the next 2 years. Bob Carvalho, Prince's manager, said that he wanted to start working on The Dawn, but they needed a concert film. So I said I would work on the Sign of the Times movie, uncredited." Sadly, while Warner signed Prince for 2 more movies off the success of Purple Rain, he failed to launch an on-screen career with it. He was in the director's chair with an uncredited assist from cinematographer Michael Bauhaus for 1986 decidedly misguided Under the Cherry Moon, which is an intentional homage to old-school screwball romantic comedies. Prince plays a gigolo swindling a French woman on the Riviera until he falls in love with one of them.
Have you ever seen Under the Cherry Moon?
No. Am I missing it?
It's something. It's a punishing watch, I will say.
Under the Cherry Moon grossed just $10.1 million at the domestic box office, so not great. The third film in Prince's Warner's deal, Graffiti Bridge, started out promising enough. Prince's new manager, Arnold Stiefel, was eyeing major players like Kim Basinger, the aforementioned Kim Basinger.
The aforementioned honeypot, literally.
With whom Prince was, you right, friendly. Patti LaBelle was also considered, and Paula Abdul as both an actress and choreographer. That would have been cool. And director Jonathan Kaplan, who just directed Jodie Foster's Oscar-winning turn in The Accused. With all those things in place, I went to Mo Austin at Warner Brothers, and they put up the money, Arnold Stiefel told The Hollywood Reporter. But when they said roll 'em, instead of Jonathan Kaplan directing, it was Prince. And instead of Kim Basinger, it was someone named Ingrid Chavez. All rude. Although I don't know who she is either.
No, you don't know who she is either.
No, yeah. Prince's first cut of the film clocked in at over 5 hours and even cut down to a spry, 2 hours?
Yeah.
Failed to make an impact when it premiered in 1990.
I've never seen Graffiti Bridge.
No. It pulled in only $10 million at the box office. By 1993, Prince was embroiled in his famous feud with Warner Brothers over his music, during which he scrawled "slave" on his face. And that was it for his career on the silver screen, unfortunately, which is sad. I feel like he could have made a serious go of it.
Really?
I don't know. He's fun to watch.
Yeah, that's true.
Prince's one-time manager, Bob Carvalho, told Spin that he had his own idea for a sequel. This sounds like something that we would riff on.
It does, doesn't it?
Purple Rain 2, The Further Adventures of the Time. Which would have transplanted the rivalry between Prince and Morris Day to Las Vegas, which kind of would rule. I would like that.
Yeah, it'd be funny, I gotta say. There have been sporadic updates to the Purple Rain legacy, though. In 2015, the film was remade in Niger with appropriately altered settings, featuring members of the nomadic group of people known as the Tuareg. They are probably most famous stateside and in music circles because the band Tinariwen are members of this tribe, having at one point been like legitimate freedom fighters in the sub-Saharan region. This is just going to be a funny thing hearing me pronounce this. It was titled Akunak Tadalat Taha Taz Oguhai, which translates to rain the color of blue with a little red in it, because the Tuareg have no word for purple.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome.
Well, here's what's crazy. This starred Madhu Mokhtar, who is currently like having a big moment as like, once every couple of years, the U.S. decides like, oh, we're going to get really into like an African guitarist. It happened to Ali Farka Touré. It happened to Tanaruwen. Currently, it's Madhu Mokhtar's turn on that semi-patronizing, merry-go-round. But he shreds. He's been influenced by his own admission, not only by Ali Farka Touré and Tanaruwen, but like Eddie Van Halen. His most recent album, well, maybe not recent, but the one that I saw getting a bunch of reviews, and the one that I have is called Afrique Victime, and it is so shred-tastic. The man rips. And yeah, in 2015, they made a Purple Rain movie in Niger with him. It was funny. Director Christopher Kirkley said that because it was made under restrictive and for conservative Muslim audiences, couldn't feature a kiss or any particularly heavy romance. And when he pitched a movie-ending hug between the male and female leads, that was also turned down. Lastly, it was announced in January of this year that Albert Magnoli's long-standing dream of Purple Rain the musical is coming true. It has a book from music and lyrics, of course, by Prince, with a book from Pulitzer Prize finalist Brandon Jacobs Jenkins, directed by Tony Award nominee Liliana Blaine Cruz. Back in 2018, Universal had actually acquired the rights to a selection of Prince songs. I believe they were eyeing a Rocket Man-esque big screen musical, but as of January 24, there had been no update on that. And actually, I'm just going to off the dome this. I believe there was an article about this recently. January. Yeah, it's premiering in Minnesota in spring of 2025. So that feels appropriate.
It can't be good, right?
Oh, pshaw. Look at all the awards that are attached to it. You got Tony nominee, you got Pulitzer nominee. Granted, they lost, but It
seems like the kind of project that you get after you get all the critical bona fides, and it's like, all right, here's the big paycheck. It's going to suck no matter what you do, but here.
I'm trying to think if there was a Rolling Stone article about it. Let me just quickly see if there's anything interesting. So I guess this proposal went back many years ago. Bobby Z said that Prince became very animated after he'd seen Rent and later Hamilton, both of which he loved. Bobby Z said, it was one of those days in the studio and he said, wow, we should really take this to the stage, like Broadway. He didn't think he could personally do it because it's a different animal, but he lit up on that, which gives me a feeling that Purple Rain going forward is in the spirit of something creatively in his orbit. It will feature songs not just from Purple Rain, because the album is, of course, only 9 songs in length. I think they're going to address some of the misogyny.
Like a big Bugsy Berkeley musical number of like people cleansing themselves in the waters of Lake Minnetonka.
Exactly. They have a big tank on stage. Yeah. I'm going to leave the last word on Purple Rain to Questlove. Questlove is a huge, avowed fan. He wrote about Prince's legacy when he died in 2016. He's brought him up constantly as a big musical obsession of his. And he said that after getting his copy of 1999 in 1982, I think he said he bought it twice because his parents took the first copy. He wrote, Prince was in my ears and he was in my head. Starting then, I patterned everything in my life after Prince. And then came Purple Rain. And the world changed. Before that, I kept my Prince obsession close to my vest. But the day after the video for When Doves Cry premiered, I was shocked to see that my secret was out. Everyone suddenly knew what I knew, which is that Prince was like nothing else, and that he was everything. Folks, thank you for listening. This has been Too Much Information. I'm Alex Heigl.
And I'm Jordan Runtagh. We'll catch you next time.
Too Much Information was a production of iHeartRadio.
The show's executive producers are Noel Brown and Jordan Runtagh.
The show's supervising producer is Michael Alder June.
The show was researched, written, and hosted by Jordan Runtagh and Alex Heigl.
With original music by Seth Applebaum and the Ghost Funk Orchestra. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. For more podcasts on iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.